Welcome back, everyone, to more from the Silvally. I'm here today with Blake. How are we doing, Blake?
I'm doing well, thanks, Pitch.
That is good, and today we're here to take another look at the upcoming Cosmic Eclipse format, and this time we are looking at Alolan Persian GX with Silvally GX. This deck has seen a little bit of success in Japan, and it's also been kind of featured around the place here and there on some other channels and some other locations. So if you've looked into the format already, you probably know a little bit about it, but we figured we're going to feature it anyway because it seems like a pretty solid idea. The ability to use Alolan Persian's ability to stop damage from things like Ultra Beasts, Pokemon with special energy on them, as well as tag teams, seems pretty strong in this upcoming format.
Yeah, you just listed off a bunch of things that are super commonplace in the format. If it wasn't enough that Safeguard was like an overbearing thing like what Keldeo has, then just tagging on Ultra Beasts in general, I think, is massive. Like, that's something that most people would probably like just go, oh, Ultra Beasts, that's nice. But like, when you just sort of broaden your like scope of what's actually an Ultra Beast in this format, something like actually, wow, that is a lot of cards this one card blocks damage from.
Yeah, it certainly does. It's a very, very potent one, and with extra kind of special energies coming in, like draw energy and weak guard energy and all those kind of things coming into the format, then we might actually see Alolan Persian doing a pretty solid job. So this is the list that we've got that we're going to be testing out. Obviously, like all of our lists, they're not necessarily the perfect ones, they're just the ones that we've got at the moment. We start off with 4 copies of Alolan Meowth. This is the Spoil the Fun version of Alolan Meowth. It has 60 HP and 1 retreat. I think it's from Lost Thunder from memory. And its attack for no energy does 10 damage, and then if it's your first turn and you're going second, it does 60 more. So if your opponent has a bad start, they don't have any Pokemon in play apart from their active, and that active has 70 or less HP, and you can just dump them for free.
Yeah, I strictly remember this card from the Lost Thunder pre-release. It was an absolute menace of a card. And I imagine it is going to be pretty strong, even outside of the pre-release format, because there's a lot of stuff that is Dark Weak or succumbs to 70 damage on the first turn. It actually noticeably one-shots a Giratina for no energy on the first turn. Even if with 130 HP being able to knock that out, going second on your first turn is it's a really nice option to have.
It certainly is, and lots of decks obviously playing things like Jirachi with 70 HP, that's going to get knocked out. We're going to see a lot more basic Pokemon coming into the format, and even if you are attacking into a tag team or something like that, 70 damage is like for free, is nothing to sneeze at. That's a pretty solid effort, so always happy to start off with an Alolan Meowth, and in this deck, not necessarily unhappy to be going second. Along with those Alolan Meowths, we have 1 copy of the Alolan Persian from Lost Thunder. Again, for a free energy cost. It has Energy Threat, which does 90 damage, minus 30 for each energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. Now, that doesn't necessarily seem so great, but again, it's a free energy attack, as in there is 0 cost, and if you want, you can like gust out something that has 90 HP, like a Malamar or a support Pokemon on your opponent's bench, because we've got Ninetales in this list, so we can gust anything that we like, and we can just gust it out and take a cheap little knockout for absolutely no energy cost.
Yeah, it really is great to have such a versatile Pokemon like this non-GX Alolan Persian. This actually was an entire deck built around this back in the past, with that the Dust Form Lycanroc from one of our previous sets, which when you evolved into it discarded energy off the active Pokemon. Saw a lot of play in Zoro Lycanroc when it first came out, but it was actually paired with this card just because the synergy and being able to get free attachments on the Lycanrocs while still attacking for noticeable amounts of damage. It's a great card in a pinch, and it really is good and effective at killing Malamars and other such bench sitters with no energy attached to them.
Yeah, exactly. Anything that is non-GX is going to really struggle, especially if it's not powered up against Alolan Persian, because you don't need to invest anything to it. You can just hit it for 90 damage, or even 60 is not so bad. But the key attacker in our deck, or the one that we're going to be trying to get out as often as possible, are our 2 copies of Alolan Persian GX. It has 200 HP and 2 retreat. Its ability is the thing that is going to make it good for us. Obviously, speaking about it before, it is not being damaged by Pokemon that are tag teams, that are Ultra Beasts, or that have special energy attached. So it is a very, very good and kind of very useful ability in this upcoming format because so many Pokemon have those traits. And the attacks aren't actually that bad that go along with it either. The first attack does 120 damage for a dark double colorless. It's pretty vanilla, but that's okay if you're not taking any damage yourself. And its GX attack, for the same cost, does 120 damage to any Pokemon on your opponent's bench. So, to go along with the fact that you can gust out anything you like with Ninetales, you can also snipe stuff for 120 damage at any point during the game, presuming, of course, that you have the appropriate energy. Now, it's not an amazing attacker, but when you pair it with the fact that it's going to be very difficult to knock out, it's probably pretty strong.
Yeah, we're seeing more and more of the stage 1s coming back with a DC cost in it. We still don't have access to double colorless, but what we do have now is even more ways to accelerate energy to stage 1s, specifically GX types with red and blue from this set. Now, curiously enough, our deck isn't currently playing them. I could see the deck playing them, but right now we're just going to be using the tried and true welder engine to power this up. But yeah, the quite a vanilla attack. They're still useful for us. Doesn't need to be anything too special when we're likely not taking damage from our opponent's Pokemon. And then sort of a slightly weaker Shadowy Hunter from Greninja GX for our GX attack as well.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got some flexibility, and we're going to be able to take some knockouts here and there, but you're half hitting most of the time. Our support line is kind of odd. We've got a Type Null and a Ditto Prism. The Ditto Prism, since we're not using red and blue, is going to act as a 5th Meowth, a 2nd Type Null, and a 3rd Vulpix. We're going to be using those to power or to evolve into our Silvally GX. This is the new one from the upcoming Cosmic Eclipse set, which has Octillery's ability, being able to draw until you have 5 cards in your hand. It also has Sensitive Blade, 50 plus 70 if you've played a supporter. And its GX attack for double colorless energy just straight out knocks an Ultra Beast out that is in the active. So if you're playing against something like the new Naganadel Guzzlord tag team, that's just 3 prizes for free. That's pretty solid. Probably not going to come up as much as your Persian one, but hey, it's definitely good to have the option.
Hey, you gotta love 3 free prize cards, but this Silvally just has this attack is just splashable. It's super useful. It's gonna come up all the time. It's good against anything. It'll soften up your numbers, make them easier. White Knight, super situational, but if it ever comes up, you'll be glad you have access to it. And Octillery's ability that it has in disc reload or something, I think it's called.
Yeah, something like that. I haven't bothered to learn any of the attacks or abilities yet.
Super strong ability. I mean, we all remember Octillery fondly. It was a bit more annoying at that time to get into Octillery, but in this format, with Cherish Balls and stuff like that, much easier to evolve into the Silvally, and a lot more reason to do so with stuff like GX attacks. And Octillery was never really an attacking threat, so it just adds a lot more to the team than Octillery ever did. For an extra price. It's
a super good card, and you will definitely see it. We're probably going to have a few videos in a row that have Silvally GX in it, just because it is going to be a mainstay of the format. But a kind of a thing that we're not seeing a huge amount of now that Great Catcher is other alternative versions of Gust. And this list, since we're opting to play the Welder version, is running a 2/2 Ninetales line in order to use 9 Temptations to gust up any Pokemon that we want. The key reason that I think Ninetales is probably the correct way to go over Great Catcher in this particular list is that the only things that can realistically knock out a Persian are those basics that are going to be sitting on your opponent's bench getting powered up ready to take a knockout. So if we can gust up those non-GX Pokemon and then get some damage onto them or even knock them out early, we're going to be in a much better position to be able to take back control of the game, especially if they're playing a tag team deck, which when you think about it, all the big decks that are out at the moment or are looking like they're going to come out, Reshizard, Pikarom, there's Reshiram from the new set, Dark Box, all these different types of decks, all heavily feature tag team Pokemon. So if we can get rid of those basic attackers, those non-GX attackers, that our opponent is trying to use to get around Persian, then we should have a pretty solid game.
Yeah, I mean, literally, I think apart from Reshizard, every other attacker in that deck can actually hit Persian. So you have like Heatran, Turtonator, Baby Blacephalon, Volcanion. Literally all of them don't use special energy. Baby Blacephalon's an Ultra Beast, but with the exception of that, all of them fall under the category where they can actually hit Alolan Persian, because obviously Heatran's a GX but not a tag team, so it can still hit it. So you really do need to have an option to gust out those Pokemon that hit through your Alolan Persian, and to do it as easily as the Ninetales does. Especially if you're already building a fire variant, then there's no reason not to include that card in your list.
Yeah, 100%. Now, one other card that we've got, one more Pokemon, is another one that has 100% no reason not to go in, is the Dene GX. We've got one copy of the card in this list. We want to make sure that we can set up as many basics on our bench as possible, and the Dene will get us into more cards to start doing that. It can also get us into a Welder in a pinch, but it's really just that one-off copy to help us in the early game try and set up our board, because we need to make sure we get Ditto or Type Null down early so we can start drawing cards. We want to get a Vulpix down early. Dedenne is going to get us as many cards as possible to allow us to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in this format, the Deno GX is a must. You have to, unless your deck is strictly no GXs, if I happen to bench a GX, I'll probably lose. If your deck isn't like that, then you should be running a copy of the Deno GX. It's just that good. It'll bail you out. You always look at your dead hand and see a Cherish Ball and be like, this could get to Dene. And
yeah, this could have been cards.
Yeah, this could be a brand new hand, but it's not, because I'm not playing the Dene well. Just chuck one in, solve that problem.
And it does, it solves the problem, we've got it. But most of the time we should be fine. We've got Silvally GX, so as long as we can get one or two of those set up, we should be okay. The Dene is just going to get us into those Pokemon a little bit earlier. Another way that we're going to try and get into Pokemon on this list is a 2-line of the new Professor Oak, the name of which I have completely forgotten, but I remember the effect. The effect gets 3 basics, all of different types, and puts them onto your bench. So that means that you can grab things like an Alolan Meowth, a Vulpix, and a Type Null, or a Ditto, and put those straight down on the bench, get all the basics that you need straight away. And that's a pretty solid effect, especially in this type of deck where we're running 3 different types of Pokemon.
Yeah, this card might be slept on a bit, because it was actually one of like the earlier new supporters that was revealed, I think, and now with the tag team supporters, it's sort of taken the back seat. But this is an exceptional setup card. Any deck that plays more than 2 types of Pokemon should be looking at playing this card in it if they evolve, because it's just so good. It helps you set up so well. There's not much more to say. There's not much more to say. It's just a fantastic setup card. If you play this going first as a deck that requires setting up, you're going to be content for the rest of the game knowing that you've got everything you need.
You certainly are, and the best thing about it is that it doesn't have the restriction that cards like Professor Elm have had in the past. Obviously, Professor Elm can get things that aren't basic, but normally you're not super stressed about it. Professor Oak is going to be able to grab you all of those Pokemon that you need. As we mentioned before, we are also fueling our attackers with a Welder engine, so we have 4 copies of Welder. Obviously, if you're following the trading card game even remotely, for the last couple of months you will have seen Welder come to the forefront as one of, if not the best, supporter in the game. And since we've got multiple attackers that have 2 energy colourless attack costs, Welder is a very good option to start powering those guys up.
Yeah, if you're running a fire type or a deck that needs more than 1 colourless as part of its attack cost, if it doesn't absolutely need any other supporter, then you should probably be considering using a Welder engine. The card's just that broke off good. It's just game winning. Accelerating your attack, like at the rate at which you attack, is game breaking. It's one of the key things that limits decks is how early they can attack. Welder helps you get past that clause and start attacking earlier in the game, especially with these evolution Pokemon which have such strong effects.
Yeah, absolutely. Welder is very strong, but we are still going to need some other draw support. Now, this list we've got 3 Cynthia and an Erica's Hospitality. This realistically could be any number of draw supporters if you wish, but we've gone for the safest list possible. 4 Cynthia just for shuffle draw, and an Erica's because lots of decks are trying to set up big benches. We should be a-okay to use these to draw as many cards as possible to help ourselves set up in the mid to late game. Obviously, we'd be preferring to play Welder, but sometimes you just can't, so draw support is always good.
Is that 4? It looks like 3.
Sorry, 3. Did I say 4?
You said 4, but
There's
that's alright.
Four draw supporters.
Okay, yeah. I see where the slip was. Okay, yeah, but these are all super strong supporters. I feel like Cynthia's a must, even if you have a must. I would say exclamation asterisk. Sorry, because shovel draw is necessary. It's always necessary. There's going to be hands with lots of good resources in them that you don't want to discard with the Dene if no other supporter does the job better. In the late game, if you're playing against like a stall deck, being able to shuffle your hand in and get it to a lower size is always super useful. There's just always a super large amount of reasons to need shuffle draw in a deck. So I always like seeing a good solid count of Cynthia in any deck, even if it's not the 4 count.
Well, and hey, the good thing about Cynthia in this is as well that you can potentially draw into 6 new cards, play a couple down, and then use Silvally GX to draw some more as well. So there's always the opportunity to do that. Moving on to our items, we're going to start off with some of the ways we're trying to get into our supporters. We've got 4 copies of Pokegear. The key for us is being able to Welder or Professor Oak when we want to. With a 2 count of Professor Oak, we're not going to be able to get it every single time. But with Pokegear, we give ourselves just that extra little bit of a chance to draw into it. Plus, Welder is always an important card. We want to be getting that as often as possible. So Pokegear, is going to be the key way for us to get those Welders out of the deck and into our hands. And worst comes to worst, we can use it to find a Cynthia or Erica as well, just to give ourselves more cards.
Yeah, I feel like if you're playing a deck which either runs a low base supporter count, or if it relies on playing a supporter on a specific turn in the game, I feel like Pokegear is a must-have as a 4 count. Like the popular Reshizard decks that insist on playing Welder every turn of the game. Or even new decks in this format which are going to want to play red and blue on the second turn of every game to accelerate energy and to evolve their Pokemon. You're just going to want to be able to find that supporter no matter what every time, so Pokegear is that card for you.
Yeah, it certainly is. Pokegear is always a good one, as are the following 2 cards. We've got 4 copies of Pokemon Communication and 3 copies of Cherish Ball as Pokemon Search. We're obviously, like we said, not playing red and blue to evolve. We've opted for Welder instead, so these resources become slightly more important. But obviously, Pokemon Communication is going to find us as many Pokemon as we need, and Cherish Ball is going to find us either our main attacker in Alolan Persian, or it's going to find us a draw option in Silvally or the Dene. 7 seems a little bit low. You might consider going up, but realistically we've got 5 GX Pokemon in the deck overall, and 3 Cherish Ball should be able to do the job. And if we get into Professor Oak, the 4 comms is going to be more than enough to find the other Pokemon that we need. So should be enough. Should be enough.
It was funny when you said 4 Pokecoms find most of the Pokemon in the deck, and you said 3 Cherish Ball, and I was like, 3 Cherish Ball finds the rest. Yeah. Between all the search options, like the supporters and in Professor Oak and just the natural draw engine, you're going to find a certain number of those just by drawing them. The rest we'll be able to get with Pokecoms and Cherish Ball. And if you play Oak, like you said, it's going to be that much easier to find the specific Pokemon you want with Pokecoms, because you won't have wasted it earlier to get a basic down.
Yeah, exactly. You should be okay. Obviously, it does rely on you cutting a couple of good cards at the right time, but hey, that's Pokemon, you know. We've also got a couple of Fire Energy support cards here. We've got 1 copy of Fiery Flint and 2 copies of Fire Crystal. Not only are we relying on Fire Energy for our energy acceleration, but we're also using it for our Gust as well. So we need to make sure that we've got access to Fire Energy when we want it. Flint can find it from the deck, Crystal can find it from the discard. We shouldn't have any problems getting it when we need it. It's not going to be quite as reliable as things like Ability Zard, but hey, you should still be okay. And effectively, we're expecting our Persian to stay in play for long periods of time, so as long as we can get the energy when we want it, we should be a-okay.
Yeah, you shouldn't need too much energy recursion. It's not like the attacks in this deck discard fire energy, like a lot of the popular fire decks tend to do. And between the walling ability of Alolan Persian and just the relatively high HP of these Pokemon, you shouldn't be burning through fire that often. I can't remember if this deck plays Heat Factory or not, but even if you were, I doubt you'd need to recover that many fire energy. It's just a great way to get multiple fire in hand for a turn where you want to play Welder.
Yeah, exactly. We don't actually play Heat Factory, but we do play 3 copies of the new Chaos Swell Stadium. So we will chuck those down there. This is super, super good for decks that like to wall, and with Alolan Persian being one of those Pokemon, Chaos Swell is really going to help us out. What we're going to do is we're going to play Chaos Swell down. Our opponent's going to go, oh, well, you're going to try and get rid of your ability by using Power Plant here. They're going to play their Power Plant. Chaos Swell is going to get discarded. Power Plant's going to get discarded, and they're still not going to be able to knock out Alolan Persian. Or at least that's how it goes in my head. Hopefully that actually works in reality. But theoretically, Chaos Swell is one of, if not the best stadiums to play if you don't necessarily care about what stadium you've got in your deck.
Yeah, I think this card is going to be really polarizing, especially in decks that rely on walling like Alolan Persian will and Keldeo already does. Both of these abilities infamously shut down by Power Plant with that Chaos Swell in play. Unless your opponent has the Reset Hole Marshadow to discard this stadium, there's no way their counter stadium is actually going to stay in play. And in case you weren't familiar with one of the basic rules of this game, you can only play 1 stadium per turn. Surprising how few people actually remember this off the top of their head, that you can only play 1 stadium per turn, because it very rarely actually comes up that you want to play more than 1 stadium in a turn. But you can't just replace it, have your stadium get burned, and put down another Power Plant. It's just the 1 stadium, and it's going to get discarded, so you're not going to be able to attack into that Keldeo, and they can just put up another Chaotic Swell.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you're back to square one all over again, and
it's gonna make these kind of decks much more prevalent. Whimsicott might also come up. There's going to be a bunch of cards that are really going to benefit from this, and even some Pokemon that are currently good, like Mewtwo and Mew, are really going to like Chaos Swell because they're going to stop those Power Plants coming down. So always worth considering putting in that Reset Hole Marshadow.
Yeah, no more Giratinas shutting and Power Plant shutting off Jirachi to get knocked out by Shadow Impact in one shot. That's a fear of the past for Mewtwo tag teams. So
yep, doesn't need to worry about it anymore. It's all over.
Yep, look forward to seeing that deck much more in the future. Yeah. As well as these decks, there's pretty much all the decks that abuse this stadium are going to be real prevalent, because at the moment, Reset Hole being the best way to deal with it. It's not great still. It's one.
You can
play with one of them.
You can play Reset Hole once, or you can run a thick Farble line if you want. But then you're wasting your supporter. It's hard to say. But anyway, we'll stop talking about that card. We'll move on to the rest of the list. We've got 2 more trainer cards. 1 copy of Reset Stamp, which is one of those staple cards that everyone just plays at the moment because you realistically have to. With this particular deck, we might be able to get our opponent down to a low number of prizes early on and stamp them down to nothing and just keep applying pressure with a Persian or a Silvally doing 120 every turn. And second, or the last item, is a U-turn board, which we're going to be able to attach to things like Dedenne or Ninetales to give ourselves a pivot if we need one. Even if we need to attach it to a Alolan Persian or Silvally, it's not that bad. It's just one retreat cost for those guys now, so a U-turn board will be super useful, and since we're not going to be playing things like a skateboard or Switch, this is probably the next best option.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always great to have a way to recur your pivot Pokemon, and like you said with the Reset Stamp, it's going to be much harder for your opponent to find answers to your troublesome Pokemon when they've got a very limited hand size. So between those two elements, I think it should be able to find a way to close out the game.
Yeah, exactly. Now, we've got a few energy to run through, and then we'll talk a little bit about some of the matchups for this particular deck. Like we've said, it's kind of it's an awkward one. But hey, we've got 5 dark energy and 10 fire energy in this list. Dark obviously needs to be attached to our Persian, but the fire energy can be used to weld it onto any of our Pokemon if we need to. And it's going to be really interesting to see this deck up in action, because the decks we'll probably be playing it against, specifically I think Dark Box is one of the ones we're going to focus on. That could be a really interesting matchup, because I mean, Alolan Persian shuts off most of the main attackers, but it doesn't shut off things like the effect of, what is it? Umbreon and Darkrai attacks, so the 60 damage on the bench could be interesting, but I don't know, it seems like it's potentially a good deck. I don't know if it's going to be amazing, but I'm excited to see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, it has all the promise of a good deck. It has strong abilities, it has game-breaking mechanics involved. I think that's a key part to any good deck, is does it break the game in one key area?
Yep. Can you
the answer is yes. Yeah. Can you cheat the game in some way? This deck cheats energy attachments. It blocks your opponents from attacking you. Those are 2 great cheats to have in the game.
Yep.
Invulnerability and multiple energy attachments. I like the idea of that. Looks like it could be good. It's just whether or not it plays out in practice.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll have to see. If you stick around on the channel, hopefully, if you haven't already seen it, then you will see a matchup with this deck very, very soon. Thanks, Blake, for coming along and talking through this one with us.
No worries.
And thank you to everyone for coming along and watching. If you like the content, then consider subscribing by clicking the sable eye in the middle of the screen. On the left-hand side, we've got some videos that YouTube thinks you'll like, and on the right, we have a playlist for Cosmic Eclipse Deck Profiles and matchups. Cosmic Eclipse, not Eclipse. I can't speak. That's okay. It's fine. It's the end of the video. No one watches here anyway. See you later, Blake.
Bye.
Bye.